Hi, welcome to another interesting episode of 100% Joy series. I watched a series a while ago. Actually, my son started watching it and I joined him because I noticed he was so wrapped in it. And I was like, what series are you watching? He said 13 Reasons Why. It's about kids in high school. And I was like, oh, okay, let me watch it with him. And I think I was the one who saw it through to the end because he had 5 seasons. I think he joined me later again. I can't remember. But anyway, the series was about, this girl called, well, it started with the girl called Anna Baker, and she had committed suicide. And then the series was telling the story or the backstory of what led to her committing suicide. And before she committed suicide, she recorded 12 tapes, no, 13 tapes for different, all the friends or people she had encountered in school. So everyone had a tape, and she entrusted or put the responsibility on one of the students to be the one to give everyone their tapes, and they had to listen to it. Now, when that happened and it got out that they were tapes, the mother decided to go to court to sue the school. She actually sued the school, believing that Anna took her life because the school was negligent. I mean, there was bullying in the school, there was harassment, molestation, and the school didn't do anything about it. Well, eventually, watching the movie, I discovered that Anna was raped at some point, and she couldn't tell anybody about it. She tried, but everybody was too busy with their lives to listen to her. And then her parents couldn't even figure out at home that there was something wrong with her. Another thing I noticed with the film, and she just felt the only way out was taking her life. Another thing I noticed was the parents were always too busy for all their kids, and the kids had a way of, keeping things away from their parents because they wanted to salvage the relationship they had with their parents. They didn't feel they trusted their parents or felt it was safe enough to discuss, the things that they were dealing with their parents. So they were making all these mistakes and learning along the way just, by themselves. But the painful part of it for me in the movie was the young promising boy who was in the school. Can't remember his name now. And he was on the football team, but he was being raised by a single mom who was a drug addict. And right from when he was young, he had to deal with his mom being with different men. He had been abused, and treated badly. But he was friends with the captain of the football team, who really liked him and had always been there for him. The guy would buy him shoes for football, and would share food with him, would hang out with him, and that kind of, the guy was like his safe place. Let's put it that way. Okay, so the guy's name was Justin. I remember now. So Justin was promising. He was so good at football, but he came from, a background that was not privileged. Now he was dating one of the hottest girls in school, and eventually, the girl had a party in her house, and they went for this party. And the captain of the football team, who happened to be his friend, who happens to have a reputation for, sleeping with girls forcefully, drugging them and sleeping with girls forcefully, actually did the same thing to his girlfriend because he was very drunk. Now, he couldn't stop him because he was benefiting from him. And he tried to lie to the girl that nothing happened to her that night. But she knew that something happened. And somehow Anna Baker saw it happen. And because it had happened to Anna Baker before, she tried to talk to the girl about it. And somehow the other girl just wanted to block it out that it happened. But you see, this whole thing started a whole spiral that eventually when the girl decided to, come to terms with the fact that she was taken advantage of by the captain of the football team, she broke up with Justin. And for Justin, she was more or less his life. She broke up with Justin, and Justin left the school and left the neighborhood and went back home to his mother's place. But he couldn't stay because the mother was with this new guy who was a drug runner, and Justin just couldn't stand him in the house. So Justin went into the street. Now this is the sad part. Now Justin went into the street, nobody knew, his mom didn't know, nobody knew. And then somehow his friend in the movie, Scott, who was friends with him and friends with Anna Baker, now decided to look for him. Eventually they found him He was on the streets. He was already a junkie. He was hooked on heroin. He brought him home. His parents adopted Justin. Justin went to rehab, cleaned up at some point, and guess what? He was accepted into Brown University. He was accepted into university. Okay, his friend's name was Clay, not Scott. He was accepted into university. Now, guess what? On prom night, he gets to prom night and is about to have this dance with this girl who to him was the love of his life, because at some point she took him back, and he slumps. At that point, he was taken to the hospital and he was diagnosed with, because he had a bad cough, with tuberculosis, and he was HIV positive. In fact, I think he had gotten to full-blown AIDS, because he was now on the respirator and he passed within 2 days. And that's a young life that was wasted. I cried at the end of that film. My son cried uncontrollably, because we couldn't understand how someone with such a bright future, just because nobody was looking out for him, got to the point where his life was wasted. And it set me thinking how, as parents, what our relationship with our children are or is. I started thinking about the things that maybe our children deal with but that they can't share with us, or what is going on in their world that we're not even privy to, because we're so stuck up in our own world, the way we believe things should be, forgetting that our children are a more evolved version of us, and we also need to let us into their world to see what it is like, so we know how to parent them. But we want to parent them the way our parents parented us, which we also still probably had one or two issues with, because we're seeing life differently from how they saw it. I believe that there are set principles that parents must pass down to their children, and the children to theirs, and generation after generation. But I also believe that every generation is different. The things that make up their generation is different, so the way they approach life is different, and it's good. And I believe it's important that as parents, we should want to know what is going on in the life of our children. We should allow them to be able to communicate with us, because that's the job we have, as parents. So when we come back, I want to ask a few questions in my second segment. I'm just going to leave you with some thought-provoking questions, and then we see where the conversation goes from there. Don't go away. I'll be right back. Welcome back. Now, I said I was going to ask some questions in this segment. Now, can your child talk to you? Answer yourself honestly. Can your child talk to you? Are you making decisions, rules, or choices in your home that are empowering your children or disempowering them? Be honest with yourself when you answer this question. Do you just care about what your child will become, or do you also care about who your child will become? This particular question is very important to me, because sometimes all we care about is who our child will look like on the outside, how people perceive them, how people see them, what they become, and how it tells on us that we can be proud and say, oh, I'm the mother of a doctor, I'm the father of a lawyer. But are you concerned about who they become? Whether they become sociopaths, psychopaths, narcissists, whether they live with traumas, whether they're dealing with, all sorts of, emotional issues or mental health issues, just because of the things that they had to deal with as children. Can your children trust you to tell you even their innermost secrets? Have you created a safe space for them in your home, in your life, for them to be able to approach you at any time and talk about anything without feeling like they're going to be judged or they're going to be reprimanded for it? Do you know your child? Do you know what they're dealing with? Do you know what your child is passionate about? Do you know the kind of impact they want to make in the world that they live in? Do you know what they really, truly want out of life or want to do with their lives? I want you to take your time and ask yourself these questions and answer them honestly. Then if you like, you can have a little exercise where you get to ask your children or your child the same questions and let them know it's okay for them to be honest about their answers to you. This is a starting point of building the right relationship with your child or your children. I'll tell you a short story before we go to the third segment. I know a story about a lady long time ago who met this medical doctor. I mean, you meet a young medical doctor who is working in a teaching hospital, and then of course he's asking you out. He's so gentlemanly, you're like, oh, what the hell? And then she gets close to him. Eventually, one of the days he takes her on date night, they end up in his house. He treated her like a lady all through the date, but immediately he gets into his house and locks the door. He takes off his belt and begins to flog her. I am still traumatized telling this story. You can imagine me listening to the story when, the lady was saying it to me years ago. And he starts beating her. She said she could barely catch her breath. He beat the living daylight out of her and then had his way with her all night. In the morning, he throws her out almost half naked with her clothes. She couldn't recover from that experience because there was no conversation, there was no exchange of words, apart from the nice, wonderful gentleman she met who they had date night, had been talking and all that. No conversation, nothing whatsoever. Now she says, years down the line, she walks into the same hospital with her mom. I think her mom was ill or something. She walks into that hospital. And she walks into a hospital. She didn't know the hospital was working, but she walks into this hospital. And there she walks past the guy in the hallway. He's a doctor in the same hospital. She said the whole trauma came back and she was horrified. Because this is someone who, during the day, saves lives. But this was someone who almost killed her in the night. Now, why do you think this guy turned out this way? He probably came from a home where his parents were more concerned about who he would become and probably didn't even figure out that the boy was dealing with so much on the inside. It might even have been the environment he grew up in, or maybe something he picked along the way. But I believe that as parents, we have a role to play in the emotional stability of our children, the mental stability of our children, the physical stability of our children, as well as the academic stability of our children. I think most times we just focus on the academics because that is what people see on the outside. Oh, my child has to have straight A's, my child has to be the best athlete, my child has to be this, because at the end of the day, you're going to be a proud mother or father of somebody who is outwardly successful. But what about the inside? What about the man or the woman that your child becomes? It is very important. When we come back, let's look at what it is that our children expect of us as parents. Don't go away. I'll be right back. Welcome back. Now, what do our children expect of us? They expect time, attention, and a safe place to express themselves. Let's not leave raising them to minders and their teachers. Even their teachers are meant to teach them their academics. The minders are just meant to watch them when we're not there. But it's our job to raise them. It's our job to give them time and attention, no matter how busy we are making all the money in the world. Because in the end, everything you're working for, you want to be able to pass down to the children as your legacy. And you want them to be able to manage it well. And for them to be able to manage it well, you have to make sure that you're raising socially, emotionally, psychologically, and mentally stable children. And this can only happen when they have connections with you as a parent. You spend time with them and you give them attention. Give them a safe place to express themselves. They want to know that what they think, want, and feel matters to you. They want to know that you will protect them or you can protect them. They want to know that you trust them. They want to know that you love them. They want to know that they can trust you. That when they tell you stuff, when they open up to you, it is a no judgment zone. You can listen to them objectively without losing it and having proper conversations with them. Imagine your child opening up to you about maybe something he or she is curious about, at a teenage age, and then you lose it. Or maybe the child is curious and finds out something and it's like, oh my God, you're not supposed to do it. That child is never going to open up to you again. But you need to understand that just like you grew up and learned so many things along the way, your child is going to also grow up the same way. And I mean, we're in the digital age, they're more exposed to a lot of things earlier than we were exposed to. So I think that as parents, we should put ourselves in a position where our children feel comfortable enough to share anything with us, and we can have conversations with them about those things in such a way that we do not judge them, but we give them an opportunity to know that they can always come back to us and get the right counsel from us. Because if you shut your children out, they're going to go to somebody else to ask the questions they should be asking you, or to discuss the things they should be discussing with you. And God bless you, it is a peer group, a friend, or someone who is as young as they are. At the end of the day, they are only going to keep experimenting because of Google answers, and then they keep experimenting, and then your child begins to probably self-sabotage because you as a parent who would have been able to advise or caution or share experiences that can help the child, you end up not doing that. Then we also have to make sure that we don't give our children an impression that we're perfect, because we all are not perfect. We all have our stories. Always make sure that you can make your children understand the fact that everyone makes mistakes. You have made mistakes, but this is what you've learned from them. When you show your children that you are also vulnerable, one of the things it does is that they don't even intend to make those mistakes you made anymore, because they know that you're talking to them from a place of experience. But when we tell our children, oh, we were all straight A students, we never partied, we never did this, we never did that, at the end of the day, that curious part of the mind will always make the child want to try out the thing that mommy or daddy doesn't know about, but mommy or daddy is telling me not to do it, So it's important for us to be honest with our children, be vulnerable with them to an extent from time to time. It helps them to know that you have experience and they can learn from those experiences. One other thing that is very important is you must learn to hear them out. Children want you to hear them out. We're fond of shutting them down when they're saying the things that don't go down well with us, or we feel it's not what we want to hear. But always hear them out. Most times we ask children questions when we're angry. We don't even wait for them to answer. We shut them up. We say, why did you do this thing? I did it. Shut up. You're not supposed to do this. You have to let the child finish speaking. Hear them out. And once you keep shutting them up, they learn to now start shutting you out. So at the point where you expect your children to, talk to me, it becomes difficult, even when they become older and past the age where you would punish or beat them or scold them. They just close up and they can't open up to you anymore, because that is the pattern you have set for them. It's also important as parents for us to remember that children, just like we made mistakes and learn from them, children are going to make mistakes and learn from them, but we need to be there for them, to pick them up, to guide them, and to help them, so that whatever the consequences are, it is minimal. There's no way you live through life you don't make mistakes or you don't fail and learn from them. Those are the things we learn. That is how we grow. So if you tell a child, don't climb on that chair, the child keeps climbing. When the child falls and feels the pain, the child is not going to climb on the chair tomorrow. You tell a child, don't do this, you've said it 3-4 times, the child still does it. Most times, some people learn from experience, but yes, it's important to be there to guide them, to make sure that they do not, indulge in self-sabotaging or self-destructive habits. Now, if you don't take anything away from today, take away the fact that you must learn when to be a parent and when to be a friend, because the closest person to your child must be you. Share the questionnaire in segment 2 with your children. Ask them those questions and see how they rate you when it comes to your relationship with them, and see what you need to do to improve on it. And if you're doing just fine, if you checked all my boxes, then well done. That's all from me today. Till I see you next time. Bye bye.